The ending. So, what's every ending like? Anybody have any observations? Any ending that you've seen?
Happily ever after.
All right. Well, every ending is when people think of endings, they normally think of Hollywood endings. They think the main character gets the girl, the evil villain is defeated, that's the end. Now, you've probably seen some movies where this does not happen. I've definitely seen a few. And you ask yourself, when you're creating an ending, you have to ask yourself, does it convey my point? Am I creating a Hollywood ending? In essence, is everything going to be perfect? Is everything just too perfect to be relatable to the story? You have to match your ending with your theme. You have to think, did your audience change through the course of the book? And for instance, if you had a nice happy tale at the beginning and you thought you were applying to 9-year-old readers, and at the very end there's a big slaughter as something, then you're appealing more to like teenager audiences, young adults audiences, and you have to address how that changed people from beginning to the end of the book, and you have to make it accordingly. Some of the best endings are ones that go full circle. In other words, they go from the beginning to the beginning. So they might end up on the same spot that they were at the beginning, or they might end up in a situation similar to what you saw or read in the beginning. And then at the very end, you have to think, where do I go from here? What is it that people can take away from this? Do I want to make sequels? What would a sequel do for me? And that's really up to you. Some stories are better left as standalone stories. Some stories are better left as trilogies, tetralogies, duologies, series, all that. And that's up to you of how you want to address it. Personally, if I was going to write a series, which I have, I would formulate from the very beginning that this is going to be a series, and therefore I can plan my stuff accordingly. I wrote my first book, then my second, then my third, and then my fourth, and then I went back to my first to rewrite it again because there was stuff in the fourth book that didn't correspond with things in the first book. And having that idea goes back to the outlines, where you want to have everything already envisioned. Everything's got to be already planned out so that you don't have to do all that rewriting again. So now, one of the last things I'll talk about is character deaths and how overrated they are. Some of the best movies that you've seen, or books that you've seen, have the character die at the end, and lots of people think that that's really cool because nobody ever does that. Well, in truth, a lot of people do that. And if your character does die, what is it going to do to the audience? What is it going to do to the other characters? What does it teach you? I mean, just because a character is in an action story, or just because he's facing up against the biggest, baddest villain of all time, does not necessarily mean he has to die, unless it's going to do something good for the story. As I said before, too, if you use I, you can't kill your character off unless you do something clever with it. For instance, I've seen some authors that use the I perspective, and they will switch to a minor character to watch the death of their main character. And that's all right. But really, character deaths, if you want to write your character death, if you're going to plan your character to die, you kind of want to do it in third person. So you have to think about the character deaths doesn't make the hero grow. For instance, is it going to show the character in a bad light or in a good light at the very end? Is it going to make him cliche or not cliche? Because if he dies for a cause, then isn't that just like all the other heroes? What is it that makes him special? Why does he have to die? And minor deaths for minor characters are completely necessary in most books because they make the hero grow and they'll make the audience grow. But main character deaths, people get attached to them, and you'll have a hard time killing off main characters. But for the most part, if you're going to make a death emotional, you should never, ever kill them off in the first book. People take a while to get attached to characters, and the longer that you keep them in the story, the more attached they'll be. So the more emotionally climactic it will be as they read that as well. So now my conclusion. when writing a story, just make it special and make it count. It's your story. Everything that I've said is my opinion. Everything that you guys are probably thinking right now are all variations and maybe even totally opposite from what I'm thinking. So, take my advice or leave my advice. It is your story that you're going to create, your ideas. So just make it count. So now, is there any questions? Any comments, concerns? Yes.
Could you explain your writing process? Do you mostly work by yourself, or have you, I don't know, like bounced ideas off of other people, like gotten their opinions on your writing as you're going?
For a story, I mainly write just with myself. But for certain scenes in the story, I will sometimes run those by other people to see if they're going to be good, especially scenes that are more, how would you say it, more dark and more to the point of this is for an older audience that you originally went for. So if I was going to kill one character, how would I do it? I mean, there's actually a book on, there's a 300 or 400 page book which I'm looking on getting soon that's called, I think, 200 Poisons for Your Character, and it's a writing book about how to kill all your characters off and make it fresh and exciting. And so now that's a great book for me, but doing that, you have to keep in mind your perspective of what your story needs will be comical and or not. So when you say going to your friends and stuff, it is very important to have their opinions on it because they are the readers. They'll pretty much approve of almost anything you do, but try to have them be more sincere than anything. If possible, get somebody that you don't know really well, but you do trust to read your story, and try to stay out of contact with them, for the most part, until they finish.
What is your series about? Before we go to the website, just so we get a little taste.
My series is about a young man, probably about 20, 21, who fought in a war for the last couple years. It is set in the near future, and he comes out of this war, and he takes on recruitment with a criminal organization so that he can pay his bills and everything. And he has a girlfriend who he's thinking of proposing to, and the day, not the day of, but the night that he's over welcoming his brother into town, who's been a long way away. She's killed, and he's framed for the murder. So he goes to prison for a short time, and then is let out on a condition that he'll help protect another person from the murders of this man who killed his girlfriend. And that's how the story progresses from there. It seems like a cop type of thriller at first, but then it gets slowly, well, I shouldn't say slowly, but it gets into a more vibrant world. It gets into a more, I would hesitate to say it, but because the word is overrated, but I would say epic atmosphere to it. There's lots of action in this first book. The second book, well, the way I write is that all my books are different. The first book is all about action. The second book is about a lot about political stuff that's going on, and corruption and everything. And this is all aimed towards young adults, so don't worry. The third book has more of a dark tragedy type of feel to it, and then the fourth one is just the epic conclusion to the series. So, like I said, you can expect probably to see it out 2013. The second book, I hope also to get out 2013. Third book 2014. Fourth book 2015. And that's how I go so far.
So you already have all these things published, basically?
I have them all written down. The first one's in the last stages of editing right now. The second one I am rewriting from scratch. The third one, I'll just have to do some minor tweaks to it, and then the fourth one, there's some touches on the conclusion that I need to fill. So they're basically all done. If I worked on any single one for about a month, they'd be done.
Can you tell us a little bit about like the publishing process, how you maybe sought that out, and then do you have an editor who looks at your stuff, and if so, how old is that person?
Well, the publishing process, I'm still new to it because I'm still going through that process right now. The first thing to do is get people to read your work, editors, and the best way to do that is to get people who are your audience read it. So, for instance, it might be good to have people that are older than the targeted audience read it. However, it's better to have your main audience read it. So, with my books, they're targeted more towards like 13, 14-year-olds and up. So, I gave my book to Rebecca Dillon, who runs the Facebook site and also does a little bit of this, and Sham over there has read it. For a time, there was a teacher who read it for mine, the first draft of it. No teachers read the second draft yet. And I mean, it's just great because you get their feedback, and they're really what you want, as long as they're honest. And I believe that my editors were pretty honest. I mean, brutally honest in some cases, but yeah, they're great. So after you get the editing done, you want to find a literary agent. And now these people are almost anywhere, and what they do is they represent you to a bunch of the big companies. Now, sometimes it's great to go on the self-publishing route, but then you have to do everything yourself. You have to distribute it to the bookstores, and you have to schedule all your stuff. And I mean, it's more professional if you do it the other way. And sometimes you can represent yourself to major publishing companies that will then take over for you, but not a lot of major publishing companies will do that. They normally want you to be official, and official to them is having a literary agent. So another good way is through contests and stuff. I'm currently entered in a contest for Scholastic to get the book published. Supposed to have results back sometime this month. Haven't heard a word from them though, so still crossing my fingers for that. But after you get the editing process done, you get the literary agent, and you get the publishing company, then the publishers will have about a 9-month period before they put your book in stores. And this is so that they can review the book. This is so that they can make the cover for your book. Sometimes even redo the title for your book. You have very little say in the cover and the title if you go this route, but I'm okay with that. And after that, if your book does well, they'll put you on like tours and stuff. But for the most part, you still have to do a lot of the promotions yourself. I'm planning on, as soon as my book's coming out, maybe doing a tour of schools and stuff around my area, around the Poway area. So any of you that are in the PUSD might see me there sometime next year or the year after. But as soon as your book does get big, then they'll start paying attention to you more. You might want to get yourself a film agent. You might want to get yourself a script writer, because as soon as your book turns into a movie, you know you'll have made it big.
Would you recommend trying to turn your book into a movie if it does well?
It's good for certain types of books. I would turn my books into movies because I see them as a movie when I'm writing them. I see my series as a tetralogy of movies. It's not good for every book, but I think it's the writer's opinion. And if you do want to make your book a movie, you should be heavily involved in the process of making a movie, because who's here saw Hunger Games? Yeah, well, I thought it was a really good movie, and it caught the book's essence really well, especially since Suzanne Collins, the author, had a big hand in having the script made and stuff, and she wrote part of it and had somebody else co-write it, and it just made the book flow really well. Where on the other hand, if anybody's seen Percy Jackson, Rick Riordan had nothing to do with the movie because he didn't want his images of the characters in his head to be ruined by their on-screen images. And he's never seen the movie to this point, and he doesn't want to because they'll disturb what he's thinking in his mind.
Where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now?
5 years from now, I hope to have these four books out. Well, I really hope that I do. I have a whole lineup of books to do. I'm hoping 10 years from now I can at least have one movie out of some sort. And I'm planning, if I do get famous, to come back and make these books a movie because I think they would translate really well to the big screen. 20 years from now, I can definitely see me writing like a series with other authors and things, because right now I'm pretty alone in our school. The one other writer that we had who published her book is gone now. She was a senior, and so I'm pretty alone there. And there's not a lot of other writers to talk to, just a lot of people that want to criticize your work and edit it, and that's great and all. But I'd really like to work with other authors. Any other questions? All right, well, please visit me at borderingshadow.wordpress.com.